call the September 10th, 2024 Village of Los Ranchos Planning and Zoning Commission meeting together. We'll start with roll call. Connie Barrow.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez.
Here.
Commissioner Edward, not here. Commissioner Baldwin.
Here.
Commissioner Drew.
Here.
Commissioner Haywood, absent. Commissioner Homan, here. All right. So let's start with approval of the agenda. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the agenda, and are there any other corrections or additions?
I move we approve the agenda. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Great. Now we'll go on to the public comment period. Residents may address the Planning and Zoning Commission to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Audience members will be given an opportunity to comment on agenda items as they come up. The speakers must have registered with the village staff prior to the beginning of the meeting, and there was a sign-up sheet that was out in the lobby. We have one person that is signed up, and that's Ms. Varos. Would you please approach the microphone and give us your name and address? Uh-oh. Say maybe we could take it to her. Maybe we could take it to her.
Thank you. Camille Vados, 427 El Paraíso Road, Los Ranchos, New Mexico, 87107. And for those of you who have been coming to the meetings and know of me and my family, you know, I was raised on the street that I live on, and I've been there for 75 years. And, you know, I want to compliment that our road was resurfaced, and thank you. It's beautiful. But now there's just more traffic. It's not that I know of an arterial street. It's a road. It's a neighborhood road. So, you know, there's at least 5 cars that don't belong to the neighborhood who come down our street every 5 minutes. And for the most part, our residents are retired or work out of their home and with no clients, but you know, they've done it for years. So I pretty much know what our individual residents' cars, because we do have a neighborhood watch and we do mark down our cars that we have. And it's for safety purposes, and that's just part of the protocol of having a neighborhood watch. And we've had a sign as a neighborhood watch and a limited 5-ton truck, but huge, especially landscaping vehicles come down our street. And I hate to see that our surface is going to eventually wear down. And if it was changed to an arterial road, but it's always been a road or street, what dictates arterial, I have no idea. And hopefully that could be answered. And should we expect more traffic down our street. We have little kids that are learning how to ride their bikes, and we have 14 children in our,
The speaker's time has expired.
okay, I understand that, but I'm going to be leaving because I'm not feeling the greatest. So hopefully I could complete my thoughts here because I'm not staying for, neighborhoods should be respected and thought of, even though there's a change in opportunities for other housing as Paladrone. But, you know, we were established in our village as neighbors, as neighborhoods. And hopefully, until that, we have a better understanding of what multiple or cluster living represents, which I don't know, that could be respected, you know, and traffic is looked at. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Faros. Let the record show that Commissioner Edward has joined us now. Great. So we'll go on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. We only have one item under the consent agenda, and that is the meeting minutes from our July 9th regular P&Z meeting. Have the commissioners had an opportunity to review these minutes, and are there any corrections or a motion for adoption?
I move we adopt the minutes for July 9th, 2024.
And I second that motion.
Great, so it's been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call. Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez,
Yes.
Commissioner Edward,
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin,
Yes.
Commissioner Drew,
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood is absent, and Commissioner Homan, yes. Let the record show that that has been adopted. We'll go on to the public hearings and applications. We have under BB 24-01, which is, hold on, get to the right place. There we go. There we go. BB 24-01, which is a request by Margaret B. Disk for a bed and breakfast establishment as outlined in section 9.2.10 subsection B, reference section 9.2.7 B7 of the Comprehensive Zoning Code. The property is located at 501 El Parizo Road, northwest here in Los Ranchos, New Mexico, 87107, and contains 0.45 acres more or less. Director Hill, could you give us a summary, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening. As mentioned, this is a request reviewing an application for a bed and breakfast establishment located at 501 El Parizo Road Northwest in the Los Ranchos. I want to read briefly some of the language concerning definitions, which is going to be a future conversation we will have. But bed and breakfast and short-term rentals are combined in the language in our ordinance. For a bed and breakfast, the important criteria is that it is a request for an existing casita. The owner will be living on site in their main residence. And so this is the differentiation that involves identifying it as a bed and breakfast under our regulations. Now, if you'll notice on the application, there is a space that calls for number of guest rooms, and it's written none. There is not a person in the house operating. So it is the house itself that comes under the bed and breakfast, which is the reason why guest rooms in particular are not called out. It is the home itself that is the subject of the application. Now, as you can see, Brennan has done his usual very thorough job in citing all the applicable regulations. And for the record, not only are all the applicable regulations noted, but the application itself is complete. It meets all the requirements of this application, and therefore the staff can recommend your approval of this application. The applicant is present and is here to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Fisk, if you would approach the microphone, give your name and address, please, and a description.
Swearing in.
Pardon me? Oh, yes. Mr. Chappell, can you please swear in anybody that wants to speak on this particular issue?
Absolutely. Good evening. I am Margaret Batzel Disk. Been here all my life. My current address, I've been mispronouncing for months. I've been saying 501 El Paraíso, but it's Paraiso? El Paraíso, okay. Road Northwest, 87107 in our fine village. Did you ask me for anything else? Because I've
Yes,
forgotten it already.
can you give a short description of what you're asking for?
Yes, ma'am. And a point of clarification, I may have misunderstood Director's statements, but I am asking permission to rent out the casita on my property, not my main house. Okay, good. We're on the same page. And that is the short introduction. I am looking for permission to rent out the casita, which is already existent on the property.
That's Jack Edward, did you hear it?
Is that your son? Son's calling in.
Sorry about that.
All right. So before we ask any questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hill, would you please correct what you said earlier, as you had said they were
Yes.
renting out the house?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, apologies for the confusion. I meant to clarify that what the request is for rental of the casita, not the main residence. The main residence is where she will reside, which means the operator will be on site per the regulations in the village code.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioners, are there any questions of the applicant?
I want to just make a note for the record that Ms. Disk is my direct next-door neighbor. So I was aware that work was being done. However, very specifically had no conversation with her about the project other than to provide contact information for Director Hill and Michelle Austin.
And I did not speak to you about that. We have discussed plans.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, any
I have
questions?
a couple of questions. In the application, it says there's no garage, but on the site plan, it shows that there's a sizable garage.
Okay. I consider that RV storage. It's enormous. I think Noah might have used it. It's very big. I was thinking of car-sized garages. So I was misheaded on that.
Okay, and I don't know to what degree that does or does not change the nature of the,
It's nowhere near the casita, and the casita renter would not have access to it.
Ms. Disk?
Yes,
On the plans, with the casita, it showed a large portion of the casita was listed as storage.
Yes, ma'am, that is a rickety add-on. I would not consider it habitable without many, many, many thousands of dollars worth of work. The casita is solid, cinder block construction, and the part that is marked storage is a frame construction with no insulation, no finishing, no paint, no ceiling closing in. It's a very weird little thing.
So is the square footage that is listed, is it in the inhabitable portion or is it the entire building?
Good question. The square footage is only the inhabitable parts.
And I assume that there is a certificate of occupancy. I've got a concern with your description of the rickety side.
Well, that's just not something I thought about. The casita has historically been rented out for many, many, many years. And so I guess I was just assuming. Would you like me to get a certificate of occupancy?
I will defer to our director,
Fair
Mr.
enough.
Hill, for that.
All right, I will gladly apply for one if I need it.
Any other questions? Commissioner Drew?
Hi.
Hello?
Were the neighbors notified?
Absolutely. Our dear Michelle took care of that for me.
I can vouch that I received a very nice formal letter with all the information and the timing of this hearing.
Was it the
Did you get a
400
letter?
feet, or it's just a question?
It's
300.
Oh.
300 feet.
300 feet? Okay, thank you.
That's a good question. I assumed the formal letter was considered. No, ma'am, I did not.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Let the applicant finish their comments. The chair may allow further comments, but that is the chair's prerogative.
No, ma'am, I did not go personally and speak to people because I understood from Michelle that that was not, that the formal letter that the village sent out would be best. And
I just didn't know if a letter was sent. It was just a question. Thank you.
yes, the letter was sent, but I did not make personal calls.
And Director Hill, can you confirm 300 feet, isn't that the?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes, I can confirm that we did send the notice per that regulation. And also to clarify the issue of garage, casitas under our regulations are not allowed their own dedicated garage, which is why the space is labeled as storage, to clarify that it is not a dedicated garage space for the casita.
Thank you.
Oh, that's interesting.
Are there any other questions?
Go ahead, no, you go ahead.
Commissioner Edward, I'm sorry, Commissioner Martinez?
The only question I have is, as you defined, that there's a storage in the back that is in need of, would anything happen if they decided to add on and make it livable? Would be my question to you. Would that change the factor of the square footage, et cetera, where she decided to bring it up to and continue using it with that?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, it would, once it comes into something that is habitable, it is subject to floor area ratio regulations in our code in terms of overall site coverage. So unless or until the plans were submitted, we wouldn't know if it would actually work on the site or not.
Right, Commissioner Edward?
Madam Chair,
I'm sorry.
I haven't checked that particular aspect. However, you're permitted in this zone, I believe, to have a main house and a casita not to exceed 1,000 square feet. If you put another living unit on that by reconstructing this storage or garage, whatever it is, I don't think it would comply with the zoning because you would then have, 3 dwelling units and not just a main house and a casita.
So, okay.
May I
Oh, they're-
clarify
they're not-
something slightly?
They're not connected then. Okay, my apologies. I was under the impression that this additional unit would be attached. It is separate, and Mr. Chappell is correct. Only one casita is allowed standalone with a main residence per regulation.
Ms. Disk, did you wish to say something?
That was the clarification I was going to make. I think there's 6 inches between the building marked as storage and the building marked as casita.
Thank you.
They do share a roof, but that's all.
Commissioner Edward, did you have something else?
Yeah, I'm sorry to drag you into all this, but
Drag me, baby.
when issuing a permit to have a third party stay on somebody's property, this is the closest thing I can think of to a hotel. By issuing a permit to something that may or may not have been inspected, issued a permit for construction, there's a questionability as to maybe condition. I feel that the village is sticking their neck out extremely far to issue a housing permit under a pretty strict guideline for which it might not have any standard of care of construction. And the things that come to mind are electrical and plumbing, structural for roof. And I think that if we're going to be revisiting this code, man, that has got to be paid attention to. No offense to you, but
No, it actually makes sense.
I mean, that's critical. I mean, if somebody got hurt in a place like that and they heard that it was a permitted place and there's a limited number of permits and we're sanctioning them, holy moly.
I can tell you that all work has been done by licensed and bonded contractors. I
You
mean,
know,
they're
that's-
famous for cutting corners as well as anyone else, but,
Yeah.
and you're welcome to inspect it anytime. if that
No,
is.
I don't want to, try and change the rules on you in the middle of the stream here, but this is a
You need to consider.
meaningful
it in the future.
consideration. While at the same time, I think it's great that you're in here because I believe that I don't know what auditing or random checks, you could hire a graduate assistant to go on VRBO and Airbnb and do random searches as to places that are being offered and if they even have a permit. When I got mine, I know that there were several that were on Airbnb and VRBO despite the permit, and they were not permitted, and they were being advertised. So we're kind of in the catch-22 of regulating these things, but not regulating these things. And it get back to something I say every single meeting. Our code enforcement officer is critical to this institution and to this village. You constantly see stuff overseas, there's an earthquake in Haiti, everybody's killed, They don't have any building standards. I wish it was the Wild West sometimes when it comes to business, but people die when that happens. And so I'm just kind of the notion, I'm glad that you're coming in here, you're above board, you're trying to do the best you can, but we need to do a better job on our side because we get a half-baked cake.
Director Hill, is there something you wish to comment?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, point well made. All the licensed improvements commented on by the applicant would be in the village's building database. So it is simple to look at the address and look at all the permits that have been approved for the property. That can be a consideration for a condition for this case if you choose to do so.
Okay. And then going back, I don't think I heard your question clearly in the answer and understood it. Does this fall under the FAR allowance?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, yes, it does.
Okay.
Commissioner Baldwin.
Thank you. Ms. Disk, if I understand the design correctly, it's functionally a studio. You've got a kitchen, a living area, it looks like there's a bathroom, and, there isn't a separate bedroom in here, is that correct?
No, ma'am, that is not correct. There is a separate bedroom.
Okay. And,
It's very long and very skinny.
okay, I see where that is now. All right, thank you, that's helpful, I appreciate it. Director Hill,
Yes.
was everything in the submission of this application done according to current code, current requirements, current materials?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Baldwin, yes. All of the required regulations for this application are spelled out in the staff report for a reason. Those are all of the things that the application has to comply with. And so the application does comply with those applicable regulations in the code.
And just to follow up, there is, as I understand it, a carport which is parking dedicated to this casita, that is not parking that you use as a resident?
I use it.
Okay,
Yes,
so
it's not a garage, it is just a roof.
understand, I'm just trying to understand where the user of the casita is going to park.
When they are there, I will park in the Noah's Ark, in the RV parts, just to give them room and access their
So
front door and.
they will have off-street parking
Oh,
adjacent to the
absolutely.
casita?
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
yes.
All right. Are we ready for a decision?
I have one quick question. Was Camille's comments in the open forum related to this, or was it something else?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, the public comment was designed for matters not on the agenda.
Okay, all right,
And there is no one that has signed up
okay.
to speak. Oh, we,
I'm sorry, I was here at 5 o'clock, stayed till 5:30, and nobody was here. And I'm sure that Drew can remember that I was talking to this corner,
okay.
so she can verify that I was here. But then I came back, and I didn't know that I wasn't going to be allowed to talk.
We'll take care of that. Hold on just a moment. Mr. Chapp, would you please swear in our additional witness?
Would you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law? Thank you.
Great. Ms. Disk, yes, if you would have a seat, and we will take, are you speaking for or against? Against, okay.
Thank you so much for letting
If
me.
you'll give us your name and address, please.
Diana Clark, 601 El Paraiso Road, Northwest, Los Ranchos. Thank you so much for letting me speak, and I'm sorry that I was a few minutes late, but I had an emergency. I do object to this. I'm sorry. I don't mean to upset a neighbor that we're going to have, but we have a very good neighborhood. We're all very friendly. We're all very nice. And I can't understand why somebody would want to take their home that is their castle and make money off of it. To me, a woman likes to have home, security, and safety. And with us having a bed and breakfast in our neighborhood, of course, they'll be parking on the street, they'll be bringing people in that we don't know, and the street itself is busy now because of what's been happening down on 4th Street and with Palindrome and stuff. And we have a lot of traffic on the street. I don't think that I would really ask you not to approve this, because it is a neighborhood, and if she wants to make money on her house, well, then go someplace else. That's all I have to say. I'm sorry.
And just to update you, it is a requirement that there's off-street parking, so they have to park on the property. It will not.
That would be great. That would be great, but I'd still, and most of the neighbors are in objection to this. So they may not come because it's a very bad night, because there is the debate, and most of them are wanting to watch the debate. But I thought it was important enough for me not to stay home and watch the debate, so I could object to this. And I do hope that you don't allow it, because it seems like the village is allowing anything and everything to go into the village. And I hope that they're not doing that. I would ask that you not approve this. Thank you.
Are there any other witnesses to speak against? Okay. Okay, you have a question of? Okay, we'll get back to that. Mr. Chappell, you're going to have to swear in Camille, please. She did? Oh, you were sworn in? Okay, thank you.
Again, I'm Camille Vados, 427 El Paraiso Road. And I've had an opportunity here to meet my new neighbor. But I wonder, she's been doing work for over a couple of months, and why didn't she come and introduce herself? You know, we've been a neighborhood for years, over 75 years. And I know change is coming. Look at Paladrone. But do we want to turn our neighborhoods into businesses, which will impact traffic? And, you know, I'm used to a neighborhood as a neighborhood, and if it's going to change, I know this residence, and I would like to have an understanding what's considered a casita and an efficiency, because the people that owned the residence years ago had grown children, and their oldest child would live in what was considered an efficiency. And when he left, the next person, there was 3 children that would have an opportunity to stay in that what was considered an efficiency. And do we have a guidelines as to what's considered an efficiency as opposed to a guest house and a casita?
The speaker's time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Faros. Mr. Hill?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, as far as the question about efficiency and guest house, the defining element is something that is detached and stands on its own and enables independent living. So whether it is described as a studio or something else, it is that it is a standalone structure that defines it as a casita.
Thank you. Is there anyone online that is wanting to speak against this? No. Okay. Were there any records, were there any submissions that was not in our packet of anybody wanting to speak for or against this project?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, no, there were no submittals regarding this case.
Now I'll ask, are there anybody willing, is there anybody wanting to support this application that needs to talk?
May I address the objection?
Just a minute, please. Anybody online that is wanting to speak in favor? Thank you. Ms. Disk, we will go ahead and take your comments, and then we'll go into a discussion. Ms. Disk, if you will approach once again.
Yes, ma'am. Again, Margaret Disk. Mr. Edward, did you had your hand up, was that, are you having a
Do you
stroke?
have questions of the applicant, or?
It's to everybody who wants to listen. On the packet, it refers to the property, I believe it's from the county records. The county records say that the property is only 1420 square feet. And that's coming from the assessor's office. Is that the document in there? It's on the proof of ownership.
I'm not sure what your question is, sir, and are you
That's the
asking
main-
me or the one?
That's the main
Well, I
house.
I'm not sure of the source, but it refers to the property only 1420 square feet. And to the degree that it was permitted construction,
That, I believe that's the main house.
that would have been, it just raises a notice to me that I believe that that was probably not permitted and it wasn't issued through the county, because otherwise the assessor would have caught it and they would have appraised it. And so, anyway, that, I don't know who your realtor was or anything like that, for them to be able to point those things out to you, but that's just something that I
Title,
noticed.
I do have good title, good clear title.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to
For
close
what
on
that
it
means.
probably otherwise, but anyway, it's just something I wanted to raise as a point. And wasn't sure if you were aware of that discrepancy.
Okay. Ms. Disk, I think you had a statement of clarification
quick.
you wanted to make.
Very quick, Madam Chairman, councilors, neighbors. I'm not going to have anyone in my home. I am a widow, a new widow, very overwhelmed by life, and I have not gotten out into the neighborhood. I'm sorry you're upset that I didn't get down to meet you. I apologize for that. I am surviving. As to monetizing a part of my property, I need that money to survive on. Plain and simple. And so, Ms. Camille, I think the definition of an efficiency is no bedroom. And since I took the room that the previous owners were using as a weight room, and there was already an existing connection between the two rooms, I did not add a connection. I cleaned it up mightily and it's large enough for a queen bed and a nice closet. So,
Commissioner Drew, I think you were. Okay.
Did you want to make your point? So, again, I just saw something here on the application that's a little perplexing to me. In one place, it says that the property is 14 square feet, but that's actually just the main house. It doesn't include the casita square footage. And then you have a floor plan here where it lists the main house is actually 1522 square feet. And the casita as being 375. There's just so many different measurements all over the place. You know, we can do a careful job on certain things. We get busy and certain things get missed. I just see too many discrepancies. I mean, the number one lawsuit, other than roofs and real estate, is square footage. And it seems as though that this application has got too many numbers. The other elements of the application might be maybe in good form or good standing, but I don't see that this is. And it was in documentation that was provided right here.
Okay, Madam Chair, Commissioners, in your report under project, the square footage identified for the guest house is 565 square feet, which is a measure by staff. And so the number in the application may be an error, but the 565 represents a measure taken by staff for this application.
Which is far below the 1,000 allowed.
Yes.
Commissioner Drew?
I do have a question, please. So was the exterior of the casita already there, I'm assuming?
yes, ma'am, and interior, yes, ma'am.
So there was nothing done on the interior recently, or it was?
No, ma'am, that is not true. I did update. I put down laminate flooring and painted a very ugly color. And I did put in some cabinets for a kitchen area. There is no stove. I understood that was a requirement for me, and did put in a refrigerator and updated the bathroom significantly. It was in quite poor shape, and it's much better now.
So we're assuming that the building itself is close to the same age as the house, which is 1947?
I have no idea. I would assume that the casita building was built later, frankly, and I don't know why I believe that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments, questions?
I just want to know when we're done with the hearing and we get into discussion amongst
I
ourselves.
think we're there. I think we're at the, thank you, Ms. Disk, we're at the.
Would you like me to leave for you to discuss?
Yes, that would be great.
All
So
right.
we're at the commissioner's discussion now on this
All right.
case.
Thank you for
Commissioner
your
Baldwin.
time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, I'm trying to be thoughtful and measured because, again, I'm reviewing the same materials that you are. I am the direct next door neighbor. I 100% have no objection to what is being proposed. The parking is there. There is actually ample parking lanes because of the RV structure on both sides of the residence. I am the direct neighbor. The neighbors on the other side are out of the country. And so can't speak to what their opinion is. But I think it's important that you understand that the neighbor directly next door has no problem with a properly permitted, properly processed application for an allowed use in the village. The prior owners had, as was noted, 3 adult children that kind of rotated through that casita from time to time. They also had cars. They didn't park off-street. They parked wherever they felt like it in that property. So it seems that we have to apply the code that exists and take notes about the code we need. So I think we have to be very careful about separating the two. There's a whole lot to talk about in terms of bed and breakfasts and casitas and rentals and whatnot. But the point is, right now, there is a code in place, and it is a code that anyone who puts in an application has to adhere to. And by my interrogatory with Director Hill, Ms. Disk has done that. We don't have a prohibition on not making money off your house. We can have that conversation at a work session if that's what we want for this village. But that's not what's before us tonight. And I think it's really, really important that we be clear about what is or isn't. I think that we have a rock star of a street. We do great potlucks. We are neighborly. We talk to each other. We do the work. And it pays off most of the time. And, you know, as I think Ms. Disk said, she is a new neighbor. She is a person who is making her way into this village. She's lived a long time, in my understanding, in New Mexico and in the Albuquerque area. But I would hope that we would also be in reverse welcoming to a new member who has invested in the village, and that we need to invest in them too. Thanks.
Director Hill, correct me if I am wrong, but from the report that was in our packet, staff did not have any qualms about anything going against our current code as an allowable business, correct?
Yeah. Madam Chair, Commissioners, yes, correct. The application is complete in content and meets all applicable regulations for bed and breakfast. Staff has no objections to this request.
Commissioner Baldwin? I'm sorry, Barrow? The other B.
I'm ready to, I move we approve BB 2401 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion among the commissioners? Hearing none? You do? Okay, Commissioner Drew?
I have, not about the application, well, about the application. I have huge concerns with the 2 different numbers that we're reading here. The square footage of the house is 2 different numbers. The casita, you said that the employee here did it, but it's still 2 different numbers. But the house is the big one. You all didn't measure the house. And there is 1420 to, what's the difference? Where's the other number down here? To 1522. I mean, that's 100 square feet. I mean, in the big scheme of life, that's nothing, but there's errors. So, I don't know, I prefer tidier paperwork. Thank you.
Director Hill, should this be a concern?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, always a concern with accuracy. If something isn't accurate and so many eyes looked at it and didn't catch it, and you did, that is actually a good thing. We focused our attention on the subject structure to make sure that the structure meets the definition of a casita, that it does not have an attached fully enclosed garage, and that the application met all applicable regulations in the code. But accuracy is a must. It is far from anything approaching a maximum FAR, But I agree with Commissioner Drew completely. We do need to do better oversight with this.
Would it make a difference on, would either of these numbers make a difference in the staff's recommendation?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, no, not at all. There is nothing approaching a maximum FAR that would compromise this application.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll start a roll call. Commissioner Barrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Edward? Yes. Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Drew?
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood is absent tonight. Commissioner Homan, yes. So, congratulations. Your bed and breakfast has been approved. And with that, we close item BB 24-01. And we have no other new business. So we will go on to our report, please.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. The only comment for the report is that we have an open date on September 24th to continue working sessions, and I am requesting your consideration to gather on that date for a work session because of schedules and the need for it to be open and accessible. We will have to start at 6 o'clock, but we are requesting that day for a work session.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have an issue that they need to speak up on with that September 24th date? Nope. Okay.
I will not be here.
Okay. So Commissioner Barrow will be out of the country.
Yes.
All right. So,
I will be here somehow.
Okay.
yes, and we wish you well with that surgery.
Oh, I don't think so.
All right. So we have finished that, and what do we got? At this point, I think all we are down to, and there's no new business, and of course, we finished the old, we're down to Commissioners' informal discussion. Commissioner Edwards, you want to start us off? Is there anything you would like to mention?
Yeah. So maybe this is, to some people, they probably shouldn't be saying this. But, you take 565 or 567 square feet. The reason people generally don't get a permit is they don't want to have to be assessed and pay the tax. They don't want to have to pay fees. They think they're cutting corners, they're going to get away with something. And they are. They're screwing you, the neighbor. Because there's not a fair and equitable assessment of wealth and taxes within our community, and there are people who are subsidizing people who are breaking the law. It's as simple as that. And this is where we get into code enforcement. You know, we're talking about, we need economic development. We need to build all these big buildings because our community needs this economic development. Well, if you effectively and fairly tax people the way they should be taxed, you don't have to do that. It rarely gets discussed, but it needs to be discussed because there's also safety elements related to it. And so I'm just gonna continue to harp on this stuff that, you know, if there's, let's just say, I don't know, take 100 casitas in the village at $1,000 a pop and then multiply it times $300 a square foot. That's a lot of money, man. You know, my daughter goes to a school over here. They still haven't fixed the air conditioning system. You go in there, there's ceiling panels that are missing. People are screwing our kids and each other. And we need to be fair and equitable about these things. And we're zoning, code enforcement, and all these things. And you know what? We're not doing it. And we haven't done it. And when people say somebody's done a good job and I see this, I'm saying, no, they haven't.
Thank you. Commissioner Drew?
I'm going to kind of piggyback off of John's if you go to Airbnb or VRBO, there's a ton of rentals in Los Ranchos. There's a ton of them. There's a lot of them. And one of them that was approved a couple of years ago was on VRBO for at least a year before it was ever approved. I don't think one code enforcement officer can ever touch everything. The poor guy's gonna go crazy. I think we truly need a part-time person to look at maybe things like the VRBO and the Airbnbs and see if they are legitimately, sanctioned through the village. Because, we talk about tax code and the taxes where you don't put the right code in, so the village doesn't get the money. This is another loss of monies that we could be bringing in. I don't know, that's about it. Thank you.
Commissioner Barrow?
I move we adjourn.
Well, I think we still got, make it quick.
Yeah, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners, I'm gonna read it off because I worked really hard. I would like to ask if at our next commission workshop, which is in September, that Makita can walk us through the possibility of looking at and making changes of section 9.12.11E2A from a 10-foot setback to a 5-foot setback. We have had variance requests, and and in reviewing this section, it looks like it really needs to be looked at. And I think that with this workshop that we're doing, if we can see that it's necessary, he will guide us through and we can go through the proper changes to change it over. And I think that that'll help our variances.
All right. Commissioner Baldwin, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, the only thing I have is just, an announcement that's been on the website about the 4th Street revitalization project, the phase 2. One of the workshops was today. Actually, it's been going on since we've been in this meeting. But it's also tomorrow. It's an open house, and if anybody wants to take a look at what the next phase from Pueblo Solano going north, it's your opportunity to go and see what the plans are and give some feedback and input.
And if you go, you enter in the back. You don't enter in the front door.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Okay,
See?
okay.
There's a motion on the
Madam-
table.
Madam Chair, I'm not a part of the discussion, but there's been so much about code enforcement. I just wanted to say that I was in a meeting this week with the new code enforcement officer who's been here, less than 2 months? And he already had over 60 violations that notices had been sent out on, and several municipal cases already going. So code enforcement is much more active than it was the first 6 or 8 months that I was here on board.
Great.
You see the difference, let me tell you what. You can already tell there's a difference.
And Madam Chair, Commissioners, just so that I can chime in, I can certainly vouch for Michael Montoya. He is an excellent employee and code enforcement officer. The VRBO is very, very difficult to track down, especially since many of them operate without any websites or anything you can find on Facebook, but it does not mean that we do not look for them. We do.
Great. Okay, we have a motion for adjournment on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We adjourn at, looks like 6:56.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You bet.
No, I gotta go pick up my daughter at the West Mesa Aquatic Center. Oh, yeah.